Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another version of Discover Your Spirit on Lilydale Radio with me, your host, Brenda Reading. And yes, I am a Lilydale registered medium, and I am able to bring to you today a couple, I believe, rooted in Western New York, but yet what they do has spread international and across the country. And my guest today is Nick and Tessa Groff. Welcome, Nick and Tessa.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So, for those of you that don't immediately recognize this couple, Nick has been a paranormal explorer, let's say that, with television. He's a producer, he's a musician, and an author. He has co created television shows starring in Ghost Adventures starting in 2008. So, you've been doing this quite a long time. Nick has led and produced Paranormal Lockdown, Ghost Stalkers, Ghost of Shepherdstown, and Death Walker. So, Nick, you have had a wide range of exposure to the paranormal side of the spirit side of life. And Tessa, who happens to be Nick's wife, is a psychic medium. And she has also worked with law enforcement and has her own following and her own practice. And so when we tried to get you to be part of the Lilydale experience this summer, I found it very interesting that as a married couple, right, you may start to look at the spirit side of life from two different directions, but through what you do together and separately, there's a meeting of the minds in the middle, right? So, Nick, if it's okay with you, I'd like to start with you and your journey into the paranormal exploration.
Absolutely. Yeah, it all started at age 8 when I fell from a tree and ripped open my whole entire arm right here on a cyclone fence, half
Oh,
inch off my artery, and I was bleeding out on the ground. My mom actually saved my life. I remember getting up off the ground, saying, "Mom, I love you," and then my body went into shock and I passed out. What I recall is being brought inside at some point, and how it felt was almost like my eyes opened, but come to find out years later, my mom said in 1988 there was nobody else around. There was just her and another lady scrambling to call the ambulance and the police. So she was on a payphone, dialing 911. And I recall it as opening my eyes and seeing all these faces hovering over me, looking down at me as
wow.
I was laying on the ground. And I tried to tell my mom, who were these people? And she was like, I don't know, because it was me and some other lady. So was this kind of a crossing over an NDE experience where it pushed me into my journey, the paranormal and the supernatural and all this stuff? I believe it is at this point in my life. I think that was the pivotal point for me to kind of jumpstart everything I was destined to kind of do. So after that, I just got highly involved in space and time, and actually more involved in UFOs and aliens in the beginning part because of my grandma. She lived in Nashua, New Hampshire. So I grew up in kind of like,
Oh,
these abduction
wow. Hmm.
cases and New England folklore. And basically, then she talked to me about ghosts and hauntings. And as I got older, my buddies and I in high school would go looking at haunted locations. I'd be the only one not running away when something, would make a noise in a weird house or something. So, as I went to college at UNLV in Las Vegas, I went for a graduate in film degree and graduated, taught my class for film. And I loved just pursuing kind of that avenue. And what I want to do is document ghosts. So I was like, if these things actually exist out there from a logical standpoint, I want to try to document, can something physically touch you from the other side? Can something affect you? What are these things and what is it? So I just pushed that kind of boundary a little bit, where I teamed up with two other guys and I created Ghost Adventures. And that kind of took this huge sensation. I never thought it would turn into something bigger than a documentary in 2007. And that kind of spawned this whole entire paranormal journey for me. And that's kind of what started everything from that one to Paranormal Lockdown to Death Walker and us finding each other in life a little bit later in life, which I always say, I wish I would have found you earlier because we're very soulmate driven. Both her and I have had like visions of past lives together. We've had so many different shared experiences. And I learned at an early age too, intuition. My mom said after my accident, she would come upstairs after my arm was healed and everything. This is like a year or so later, and she would hear me talking to myself in my room, and she'd go and she would be like, "You were very hyper. I know your imagination and the difference, but you'd be talking in the corner of your room, looking up, talking to angels." And she's like, that would creep me out a little bit because she would crack open my door and see me in the corner of the room looking up, talking to some angels floating on the ceiling. So that's that. These are all memories, and I vaguely remember parts of that, and I actually remember seeing things like that, like figures, but I just can't recall it good enough. So I think a lot of this stuff, when you put, connect the pieces through life, it's all evolution of like a human being, what they have to go through and the challenges. And, you're put to test and we're destined to do certain things. But I think a lot of my life was to think outside the box and say what else is out there beyond just living and going through the steps and being confined to a box. So I love evolving. I love learning. No one's an expert in the paranormal. We're constantly teaching ourselves, constantly experiencing and learning. But that's the point of life, is that middle part. And then when we put in the consciousness, and then when we pass on, I think the energy still continues, and the energy still has traces of the memory and things to say with that consciousness. And I feel like that, to me, is what my passion lies in, is to try to like study that, learn from that, and experience and document it. So it was amazing to marry the love of my life over here, when I actually didn't know she was a psychic medium at first. It was just that instant connection.
Well, no, because nobody starts their first date with, "Hi, I see dead people."
Right. No, it actually started with,
did.
"Hey, you like rap music?"
But I didn't know who he was either, so it kind of worked out.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
kind
how
of
we
worked
came
out.
together.
Yeah, it kind of worked out. Now you have children, and you're doing joint projects and tackling this. This is a big job, when I think about, and I lump myself into the category of what you do is, being a registered medium and teaching people how to open up and use their gifts, and also always expanding our knowledge, right? Because we only use a very tiny portion of our brains. And I agree with you with what you said about our consciousness stays, it stays, and it goes on to the next level. And I always tell my students, it's like a big faceted diamond, and each experience on life is one of the many facets, but yet the whole diamond has everything, right? And it's funny how you're talking about yourself as a child, looking up at the corner and talking, because I've seen that very thing with my own grandchildren. And, I would imagine your children being young, you are aware and awake, so to speak. So you will catch those precious moments of these interaction with your children, with your loved ones, or with your angels, or however that works. And I feel like the more awake and aware we are, it just helps the generations that are, being raised up now to not have to go through what we did. I mean, you're younger than myself, but to be told that no, that can't be possible, or no, that's not right, or that we don't believe in that, but the whole dogma of the whole thing. So I find it reassuring, and I'm very happy that the two of you are on this journey together, and you're part of a bigger mission. You really are. You're part of a bigger mission for humanity and as a whole, So, well, that's fantastic. And so, Nick, you have a movie coming out shortly. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. I had this horrible cough for a while, so I was just getting over this terrible cold. Our whole family had it. We have a brand new film coming out. We've been working on a documentary film. It's amazing. It's based on a true story about two twin brothers. They grew up in a haunted house. It's kind of a sad story because there's a lot of abuse and things that occurred within the family that opened them up to other things. And there's this one brother who has this negative attachment. So it's crazy how it turns into this story. Sorry.
It's got a tickle. Of course you do.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
We can give you a break if you'd like and let Tessa talk.
I can,
No, it's fine.
I'll explain
It's the
some of
devil's
it.
mark.
Yeah, I'll explain some of it because we had no intention of really doing this film, and the way that it came about was kind of interesting because we were invited to do an investigation for YouTube, and we met these brothers, and the one brother handed us a book, and it was a book that he had written about himself. And I sat there and I just read the intro of it, and I said to him, why are you filming these haunted locations when you should be filming this? Mm-hmm. I'm like, this story right here is what I think people need to hear, because there's so much reality to the situation that I think a lot of people would be able to relate to. And plus his story was so compelling, like I think there's a spiritual side of it and the reality of what could happen with different attachments and whatnot. But then there's like the humanistic side of it with addiction and trying to come out of that and do better, and abuse at home and how that can enhance somebody's, vulnerability to these spirits and stuff. And so we took the film on in hopes to help spread awareness, but then also as our ability to help Joel, which is the twin brother. One twin brother got affected, the other did not. And so it's kind of their journey, like parallel to each other and how this occurred. But we took the opportunity to also help him and to rid him of everything as well. And so it's a whole journey. It's a documentary from, the start up until present, where we actually bring people in to help him and hopefully rid him of his past. So it's airing May 23rd at the Riviera Theater in North Tonawanda, New York.
I find that fascinating.
Sorry, one second.
It's okay. Bye, Nick. Okay.
Bye.
So girl.
Yeah, sorry. I had this horrible cold.
But it's a tickle. You get that tickle.
That aftermath where it's dry. My son has it too.
So actually, the premiere is May 23rd, North Tonawanda at the Riviera Theater. Is it, can people still buy tickets?
Yeah, they're still available
on social media and Riviera Theater.
You could go to the actual Riviera website, or if you just check our social media, we've been sharing it. So
awesome, because today's actually the 20th of April, and this show that we're doing right now will air on Thursday, of this week. So there'll be plenty of time for people to get tickets to your movie, find out more about it if they would like to. I just want to touch back a little bit on the whole concept of the being open to things because of addictions or grief or sad, whatever it is, and I find I've spoken to different people too, and it seems like alcohol, drugs, whatever, it allows for an openness of the person without conscious, ability to, I don't want to use the word protect, but what I say, like as a medium, when I do my work, I always start with a prayer, right? Mm-hmm. Always start with a prayer, and always work with a certain type of energy, right? So boundaries, I guess what I'm trying to get to is that boundaries in our work, Nick, yourself, Tessa, yourself, it's important that we know about boundaries and how to set them. And so that I think will be a very interesting aspect. And the wonderful piece that you just said about trying to help him, because I have a very good friend who's a medium, and she's been on my show before, and she teaches at Lilydale, and she actually was part of a paranormal exploration group until she would send the spirit home. Like she would come with them, and then she felt a responsibility to help the spirit move on, and then afterwards it would be like the spirit would no longer be there, and her peeps, her people were like, well, where did it go? And she says, well, I had to help them. So there becomes that aspect, right? It's like, what is your real job with this, right? Is it just to document, or is it taking another step further to help the spirit people and help the living people as well? So
when I tried to be, I guess you can call it normal, I went to school for teaching, but then my master's degree was in clinical mental health counseling. I went for school counseling and then did a bridge program, clinical mental health counseling. And my intention was, you know, I had a loved one, and I still have a loved one who suffers from addiction. He's an ex-military vet. He was in Iraq, did 2 tours, you know, but unfortunately between the PTSD and drug addiction, I experienced a lot with my loved ones and stuff. So going to school, my intention was I wanted to try to help people. But through my schooling, it was cool because you get the education side of it. And so you get to learn diagnoses and all sorts of different things. But I realized that through my mediumship, I felt I was actually able to help people more than to be confined in a clinical setting. So, you know, I do utilize that a lot with the things that we do. And especially with a case like this that we took on with Joel, you implement a lot of those different things, you know. And so I think it's a very broad spectrum of what we try to do. And I think each case is different and each person is different depending on what they need and what they require. So we do document it, but I think ultimately with every single thing that we do, even with our shows that we film on the regular, we do try to help the people that we come in contact with, you know. Some don't want help. Like some are very comfortable with the spirits in their house and stuff. And
Sure.
I mean, to each their own, but if we're able to, we do help.
Yeah. It is always entertaining, isn't it? It's never dull. It's like an adventure. It's like, what's next? Because you just don't know. And same with mediumship. We're going to talk to you a bit here, Tessa, now about how you started with your mediumship. It's like just when you figure out, you think you know how spirit is working with you, bam, you get a curveball and it's a whole nother thing, right? So, so Tessa, you also started your journey as a child. Why don't you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I do believe that I was born with the ability, and I think that it was passed down. Like looking back, my grandmother had the ability. My mom is also a medium. My grandma never admitted it, but I know that she was. And then there was me. And so I do think that I was born with it. But at the age of 3, I did have a near-death experience. I was born with an illness that nobody caught on to, or at least doctors didn't, I would say, for quite some time. By the time my mom pushed to get me into Children's Hospital in Buffalo, the illness had gone kind of sepsis through the body. And so they did an emergency surgery. Yeah, it was pretty bad. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. I had tubes galore. I had to learn to walk again. And I remember in the hospital just putting me to sleep for the surgery. It was such a major surgery. And this is 30 plus years ago, but they let my mom into the surgical room while they were putting me to sleep. They would never do that now, but they did it back then for her. And it was her and the anesthesiologist. And if anybody knows how a surgical procedure goes, most of the time the doctors and nurses line up against the wall. And typically it's just the patient and the anesthesiologist putting them to sleep. But my mom was standing there. And I do remember going to sleep and seeing the faces and everybody lined up around me. And it was all in white. So in my mind, I think as a kid, I thought it was the doctors and nurses. And they were all smiling at me. And they were asking if I was okay. And I kept repeating and answering every single one of them as I was going back to sleep. And so when I woke up, I remember the first thing I said to my mom after coming to was, why were they all asking me if I was okay? And she was like, it was just me and the doctor. There was nobody else there. And I'm like, no, they kept all asking me why, like, are you okay? And then in my 2-week stay at the hospital, there was one night I remember very specifically, and I will note that it was storming outside. And so those are little things that I look at. There was like a big lightning storm outside and I was watching the lightning and the door opened. And I initially thought that maybe it was somebody coming in to do vitals or change my medications. And a huge ball of light came into the room and it just hovered over me. And within the light, I saw those same faces as I did as I was going on. Yeah. And I just stared at it for a moment, not really knowing what to do. And I looked at my parents and they were asleep on the cot. And then all of a sudden it went back out of the room. And that was it. And so that was really, I think, my first recollection. I didn't know it back then, but that would be my first recollection of seeing spirit in some form. But then going back home, I did grow up in, I guess, what you can consider a haunted house. I guess I feel like every house is somewhat haunted, but this one specifically had a lot of things take place within the house that I would have never known about as a kid. And so I remember a man coming to my room. That was my second recollection, was this man who would come to my room every single night. And he wasn't scary. He actually looked familiar. I actually thought it was my mom, because back in the day, my mom had that 80s curly hair.
Yes.
And this person who came in had this very curly, dark hair. So being a child and seeing this person enter my room, I actually thought it was my mom at first, but then I realized it was a guy. And then I would get freaked out and hide under my covers. And this happened for quite some time, until one night I asked him who he was and why he kept coming into my room. And he sat down next to me and he smiled at me and he said he was my Uncle Tommy, and that he gave me all these messages. He said, you have to tell them about the shirt that I'm wearing, and, you know, but don't call your mom, call her this name. It was like a nickname that he had for her, and that'll make her laugh. And he said, you know, but you have to tell grandma too, this message and this message. He had died tragically in the house before I was born.
Oh.
And so when I told my mom the next day, she looked at me and she was about to cry, and I didn't know if I was in trouble or not. I didn't really know what was going on. But when I talked to her about it, you know, moving forward in the future, when I was older, she was like, there was no way you would have known any of that. You know, she's like, and that's how I knew you had the same ability as me and your grandmother. Mm-hmm. I didn't know for a very long time, though, what that meant. I didn't know that other kids in school, for example, didn't see the same things as me all the time. And I certainly didn't know that I would be able to use it to help people in the future. And so that was a fun journey. That's why I went into school for counseling and for teaching, because I knew I wanted to work with kids, especially. I wanted to try to help people, specifically veterans, with PTSD and different, you know, clinical diagnoses. But within that work, I realized that I was using my abilities and I was picking up on things. And so I really kind of just moved toward doing mediumship specifically. And that took off. I just started reading people all over the world. It just kind of blew up. And I started working with law enforcement, doing missing persons cases, homicides, cold cases. And that took off into me actually doing live shows. And I was selling out casinos and big venues, and I was just doing amazing gallery readings for people. And so, yeah, it's a very interesting journey. And then when I found him, I think it works because I feel like I thought for the longest time, like, who the heck is going to want to date somebody that talks to dead people? But it would be
feel your pain. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right. Uh-huh.
How do you tell somebody that?
Well, it's funny because
very slowly.
Right.
Very slowly.
Well, people, I have guys always ask me, like, how do you live like that? How do you live? I go, well, I have nothing to hide. So if you have nothing to hide, then it's fine, because she'll find out one way or another. That's the truth. Like, if you have nothing to hide and you're transparent and you're you know, that's any relationship.
I will say though, a funny point to this is that I did not want to do paranormal stuff. I didn't. And I had production companies approach me multiple times before meeting him, asking me to do TV.
Yeah.
But they specifically wanted me to do paranormal television. And I would say to them, I don't want to do that because I'm not a ghost hunter. And I'm a medium.
No,
so if you want
you don't have to hunt. They come to you.
Right. Exactly. But also, and I think you'll understand this, when you're a child and you go through a lot where you don't understand your ability, you have these spirits coming to you at night, it is scary. And for quite some time, it takes a lot of practice and courage and things to get through and really like hone in on your ability. And so then you don't really want to put yourself in a position where you're with more negative energy, or that something can scare you. I get scared. My kids will jump out at me purposely just to scare me, because I have such a
She hates she hates the pretend haunted houses.
Yeah.
She can't go through them. I laugh through them. I think they're hilarious.
No,
because they're just so fake, right? They're just so fake. You're like, small potatoes.
Well, it's hilarious to me. I love haunted houses.
I can't. I don't know what's wrong with me. I know in my mind that it's fake, but I just have a very bad jump scare reaction. But so like I didn't want to do paranormal for quite some time, because I'm like, why would I put myself into these scary locations? It took me forever to not be afraid of this stuff. And it took me and so that was like the running joke, is that he tricked me into doing paranormal television.
Well, I don't know if it would be tricking, but
he tricked me.
We started.
Own up to it, Nick. Just own it.
I was investigating different locations for the series Deathwalker that I produced, and we were shooting a ton of locations in Western New York, and I was telling Tessa she should come along with us, and that's what it turned into. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're picking up on so many things here we couldn't discover in research. You can only find so much information at some location. She started picking up on so many different things. I'm like, we need to be including this in part of these episodes. Your insight, and it was actually helping us find new research through historical documents and stuff that she was discovering. So it was actually very beneficial.
And one location is actually Children's Hospital.
Children's Hospital in Buffalo.
Oh, sure.
It's abandoned. So we didn't know specifically the location. My cousin, who did a lot of the research, he found it. We gained access because, come to find out, the security guards and the people running it were actually big fans of mine from my other shows. So easy enough. It gave us a little bit more, I guess, red tape to get through. It was easier. So I show up and we're talking to them. I'm like, Tessa, you got to come to this location. And you get there, you're like, oh my gosh, this is where you were as a little kid. That whole story she just talked about, that was there. So we're like, let's go find your old room up top on the 4th floor or whatever.
Wow.
So we went up to her original room. We found it. And now here's the crazy part.
And the surgical room, the exact surgical room.
Where she had your experience. But here's the crazy part. We walk into the room. She's like, this is where I saw this. And we have it all on film. So it's all in the episode. It's a great episode. And we find a penny sitting on near the window where her bed would have been, tail side up, right?
Tail side up, which is my symbol for my grandmother. Because my grandmother loved gambling. My grandmother was a gambler, and she would pick up a random penny and she'd be like, oh, look, a lucky penny. And she would take it like to the slot machines and she'd pretend to rub it. She was very superstitious. And, but she would always like say, if it's tail side up, it's lucky, when she was alive. And so now after she's passed, whenever we find a tail side up penny, I'm always saying that that's her. But it's not like we find these things all the time.
Yeah.
They're in very specific places. And so when we
periods in life too.
Right. And when we found this there was only one random penny and it was clean. Like, this building has been not in use for quite some time. You could wipe off the dust and there's this beautiful shiny penny just sitting on the windowsill, tail side up while we were filming. And I thought it was the most amazing sign, you know?
Yeah. She was letting you know you didn't have anything to fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that episode because it was such a like we were meant to come together. I really strongly believe that in life. We definitely were to raise our vibration. So we were definitely meant to raise and evolve together. Mm-hmm. And it's very powerful. And I feel like the universe at times is up against us to stop that sometimes, because soulmates and stuff like that, twin flames, soulmates, anything in that like mannerism coming together, it actually increases the positivity or that weird vibration. So that location I felt was super, I don't know. I feel like more emotional maybe for me, because I put like in the ending a tribute to her grandmother who passed away. And it's like a big kind of full circle coming around, because we were also there and you were picking up on a 14-year-old girl who passed away. Mm-hmm. She kept seeing this girl downstairs on the first floor where they bring you into the ER emergency room. And you're like, there's a girl over here. She's following us around. We had no clue who the girl was. She was just talking about her. We documented voices coming through of this girl, her name, everything. So it was validating what she was experiencing. We were validating it through, pseudoscience. The technology. But what was very fascinating is when we left, we started digging into research of this name and what was being said. Come to find out, there was a girl who actually died right there. Her name and everything was that. And we found out everything about it.
Of course there was. Of course. Yeah. Of course there was. Like, of course. Yes. Yeah.
Well, I think
you don't have to sell me on it.
Yeah, but from a logical perspective, a lot of people who aren't familiar with psychic music, or and there's a lot of people claiming to be psychics. There's a lot of people claiming to be paranormal investigators these days, or whatever. I know. It's such a niche market now. It's like every corner, a 7-Eleven with a psychic or a paranormal investigator.
Or people that just walk up to you, hey, I gotta tell you something.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a message. Like,
But here's the
boundaries, please.
Yeah.
Right. But here's the thing: when you validate it, right? When you validate it through some piece of equipment, or it's like right in front of you, and you can validate it with a historical document or something that's legitimate to this property. Like we've done cases where we discovered your psychic abilities over there. There's where the bodies are and stuff like that on a property that we were having all these hauntings. I investigated a location called the Hinsdale House for 10 years. 10 years I was pulling back the layers and we couldn't figure out what was going on, but we figured out it was the land, possibly something ancient, maybe an elemental or something like that. Native Americans used to bless the 3 points of the mountain to suppress this negative spirit. Now we realized there was supposedly some undocumented family plot that was dug up by this man-made pond in the back, and the graves and the other stuff was thrown aside. She indicated with her insight. We brought out a guy who's been doing ground penetrating radar for decades, and he discovered some major possibilities and hits where these unmarked graves were, exactly where she was. So I think when that type of stuff becomes a reality, it's to the norm of a person who isn't familiar with this stuff. It's almost validation. Like, how can that be? How is she having insight? How are they documenting? Oh, now a ground penetrating radar. So now it's a real thing, So I think that's what we like to do with our combined forces, is kind of validate some of these experiences and insights and stuff like that to bring it to a broader audience to show.
Yes, because there's so much more than what we can see with these eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's it's funny because I'm just reflecting for a moment on some of the things you said, Tessa, about hiding under your covers. I did the same thing. I put my head at the bottom and my feet at the top because I figured that way they'd get my feet and not my head. I mean, it's a real thing when you're that age, And so it's very I understand a lot of it, and it resonates and rings true. And
you want to hear the weirdest thing that I came up with as a kid?
Of course I do.
Okay. So I was a dancer, and for pretty much my entire life. That's a lot of people don't know that about me, but I was a dancer. I did competitive dancing, professional dancing, all the way until a couple years ago. And so as a kid, I loved The Wizard of Oz. So I was huge into musicals. I had intended to go to New York and do, dancing for college and this, that, and the other. But I loved The Wizard of Oz growing up. And I would recite it. I don't know how my parents put up with me. I would watch it every day and I would just recite things and I would sing, and it was ridiculous. And I remember as a kid being in that bed and covering my head and stuff like that. And so you have to go somewhere sometimes to be okay with what's happening in reality, right? So what I would do is I would go to scenes in The Wizard of Oz and I would do things in my head. But then all of a sudden, Glinda, and she'd come in her big old bubble. Mm-hmm. So one night I was like, you know what? I'm going to put Glinda's bubble around me, and then no spirits can come and bother me. And weirdly enough, it worked. And then I was like, okay, so either I'm crazy or this works. So let's try it again. And then the next night I did it again. And that became a safety thing for me, is Glinda's big bubble. And I kind of kept that, not knowing what I was doing as a kid, but really you're intentionally creating a boundary, right? But for me as a kid, it was Glinda's bubble from Wizard of Oz. And that saved me from the spirits that would continuously talk to me at night.
And you could sleep.
Yeah.
I don't think you're crazy at all. In fact, my last line of my prayer when I start my readings is, surround us in your beautiful pink and white, unconditional loving light. Amen.
Oh,
so okay. I put that pink bubble around myself and my client. And it's not so much for protection, but it's hey, this is of the highest and the best. And that's all it's going to be. So back off. That's exactly what it is. So no, I don't think you're crazy. I am so enjoying this so much. And I'm sure our listeners are going to be shaking their heads and all excited. and I want to say that your energy is fantastic. I love it. And you will be with us in Lilydale Saturday, August 29th. There is a special VIP class with the two of you, and it's called Between Two Worlds. And it's between 2 and 4 p.m. that day. And it's a limited amount of tickets, people. So if you want to spend 2 hours getting to know Nick and Tessa and talking about these things and just enjoying yourself, you might want to go online to the website, lilydaleassembly.org, check out the online catalog and get your seats, because there's a limited amount of seats for the VIP workshop. And then later that day, 7 to 9, Nick and Tessa will be doing an on-stage auditorium event. Lots of tickets for that. And it's called Live with the Other Side. And they will be exploring how spiritual awareness and paranormal investigation shape everyday life, not as spectacle, but as a lived experience. And I think that is so profound, because once you realize that there is so much more than what we know and see, it's like you don't want to live any other way. You want to know and experience. And so if you have a moment, would you like to talk a little bit about your Live with the Other Side? Because I think you have something special coming up with the same title.
Yeah, we do. This Friday, I'm super excited. Brandon TV, you can stream it right off his app. It's pretty much all across the platforms now.
Yeah, it's available on Apple TV now as well.
Yeah. So definitely just search up Brandon TV. And this Friday, we will be premiering Live with the Other Side, which is based on NDEs, near-death experiences. So we brought in a couple of different people who actually were pronounced dead, brought back to life, and they share their stories and what they went through from start to finish. And then we bring in a doctor who's incredible, who was studying about 5,000 plus cases of NDEs. And he talks about from his perspective. And then at the end,
he started off as an oncologist. So,
yeah, that's true.
Which we found interesting. He was an oncologist first, and then with his experiences with his patients led him into researching these NDEs. And now he's one of the biggest researchers of near-death experiences. So we did bring him in. So we have the doctor, we have two amazing people who had near-death experiences. And then at the end, I do a live gallery reading for the live audience that we have. So it's a really incredible special. And we're very excited that the world gets to see it now.
Well, I'm hoping our viewers will check that out. Brandon TV, Live with the Other Side. And will you be doing any gallery readings that night in the auditorium for us as well? Will that be part of your presentation?
I would love to. I would love to. Because, and I have to tell you, it's almost like everything's coming full circle, because Lilydale was one of the first places when I was really, I don't even know, I might have just become a teen when I went there. It was one of the places that finally opened up my perspective of I can use my ability to help people. I went there with my mom to see Janet No Havoc.
Oh, and beautiful lady. Mm-hmm.
She was amazing. I had the most incredible time with her. She also scared the crap out of me, because she put a blindfold on me and she made me read in the audience. And I had no idea what I was doing, because I had never really done it before. And she came up behind me and she had a woman come up behind me, and she had me blindfolded, and she had her put a hand on my shoulder. And I just started reading her in front of everybody. And I remember at the end, Janet looked at me and she's like, "You're supposed to be using this ability, like, to a bigger extent. You need to be doing this." So to come full circle and now be the one to come to Lilydale is very, very meaningful to me. So I'm very excited. I would love to do readings for everybody that night. And we're just very grateful that you guys are even having us.
Oh, my goodness. It was divinely inspired. Let's put it that way. And we are so excited for Nick and Tessa Groff to be coming to Lilydale. It's not till the last week of season, but don't wait till then to get your tickets, because I think once people find out that you're coming and all the things that you're doing, I think it's going to sell out quickly. So is there any last things you would like to share or talk about before we close out our interview today?
Yeah, we have a ton of new projects coming up that we'll be announcing. So we have an Italy tour that we're doing this year.
Wow.
That's going to be phenomenal. So we're taking a small group of people with us back to locations throughout Italy that are haunted, historically documented. We're going to Venice. We're starting up there and going all the way down to Rome. So it's been, I don't know, 20 years maybe almost now that I haven't been back to an island called Poveglia. So there's Poveglia and a different island that's close by that has this huge report of hauntings and whatnot. So we're going with people there. We'll be at where are we going? Penner's Paracon next month. We'll be there, and we're all over the place. The movie premiere, May 23rd, yes. Devil's Mark.
And then in between everything, we're filming 2 brand new shows with Brandon TV, but they may be airing on other networks as well. And those are really special to us because we're finally able to do what we've been wanting to do, which is what we started talking about before, cases where we're helping families and children with hauntings or with experiences within their homes. And we have the ability now to go in and help a lot of people. So we're really excited to get filming that. And that'll be available this year for everybody to watch as well.
And we're working on a big family show too. So behind the scenes family show is going to happen. So, and we'll probably shoot more other side shows coming up.
It sounds like you need a nanny or something. That's all I'm
we
gonna
do.
say.
We do
because it's like anybody can really help. Reach out to them because they are so busy and they have 2 little kids. So I think it's wonderful. And I think the other thing too is we call it a haunting, but everything isn't negative, right? Sometimes it's just people that just are stuck, don't know where they are, and you got to give them a little boost, right? So I feel like that's also part of your mission, right? Is to really get people to understand all the aspects of it. And the I look at it as it is a mission, it's trying to help people and get spirits to where they're supposed to be and help the living as well. So I just want to thank you because I know you're very busy. So thank you for taking the time to meet with me and do this little interview so people can get to know a little bit more about you. And I think it's going to be fantastic, this program that we've put together for you this summer, and just much luck and continued success in all you do.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited to go to Lilydale. I've never been, so this is
my goodness. Oh, and you were going to let me know if you found a babysitter if you needed an overnight. So don't forget to let me know that too, right? Okay.
We're still looking for one.
Yeah, right? Okay. So if you have not checked out the website, and I must say we are under construction, we are going to have a new website reveal very shortly. But you can still see the online catalog. You will find, you can't miss Nick and Tessa. They have a big full page. You can't miss them. So you'll be able to find them to sign up for their classes. And so thank you for joining me for this episode of Discover Your Spirit. I'm Brenda Reading, and have a great couple weeks. Thank you, Nick and Tessa.
Thank you.